March of the Machine is a Magic set on a scale unlike anything we've ever really done before. It's got a truly epic showdown of heroes from across the multiverse against the Phyrexians who want to conquer it all. And just as wild as the story is, the set is built to reflect all that too. Each pack has a returning legend in a special frame. I did a whole video talking about how you can expect to see cards like Ragavan and Atraxa show up in these packs. There's also team-up legends, putting heroes or villains together to fight as a duo. And just revealed, I know you've all been waiting for this one, there's a brand new card type called Battle that really shows off the scale of this conflict. It's a bit of a doozy, but the gist of these cards is that you play one, get its immediate effect, and put some counters on it. It can be attacked like a Planeswalker. When it hits 0, you finish the battle and get to cast it transformed. Boom. So yeah, the main set is pretty loaded up with wild new stuff. But that's not all March of the Machine has to offer. When Magic designer Ethan Fleischer was working on the Commander decks for March of the Machine, he came up with the perfect returning piece, Planechase. And that, well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and Planechase first premiered back in 2009, had another release in 2012, and we haven't seen any new planes since then, 11 years ago. This format, inspired in part by World Enchantments of all things, has been a popular fan ask for ages, and where better to bring it back than a set where you're literally visiting planes all across the multiverse. It was a perfect fit. Originally, Planechase was bundled with decks to play them with. And today, given where we hear about the most Planechase being played is in Commander games, putting it into the Commander decks just fell neatly and organically into place. But also, given it has been 11 years since the last time we rolled this one out, Planechase Anthology aside, a lot of you probably aren't familiar with the glory that is Planechase. So today, I want to tell you what it is, how to play it, and what you can expect in the March of the Machine Commander decks. Ready? Let's get started. Okay, so Planechase uses these oversized cards, about twice the size of a normal card, called planes. Each of these is a specific place on a plane. For example, this one is Jund, on the plane of Alara. They pretty much all have a static ability of some kind, like an enchantment that impacts everybody, and it's really tied into the world. So here on Jund, which is the green, black, and red piece of Alara that brought us the Devour mechanic, if you recall some of those cards, it grants everyone's green, black, and red creatures Devour. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty fitting for Jund. There's another ability that's next to this symbol, the Chaos symbol. And there are also some words about chaos ensuing, but we'll get to that in a second. Notably, Jund is not the best place to be if you're a blue-white deck. There are only green, black, and red bonuses. What gives? Well, just like a Planeswalker, you can always switch planes, and therein lies the fun of Planechase. Everybody brings their own deck of 10 planes to the table, and you shuffle them as the game begins. I will note as an aside that as an optional house rule, many people elect to shuffle all those planes together for the game instead of having your own planar deck, but that's up to you and your table. Anyway, once the game starts, the first player reveals the starting plane from their deck. Then, whenever you planeswalk, you replace the current plane with the top one from your planar deck. So maybe Jund turns into Esper. Much better for the blue-white player. Now, how do you planeswalk? Well, it's going to take a little more than just clicking your shoes together and whispering Esper a few times. You use, drumroll please, the planar die. Now, this is a very unusual die. 4 of the 6 spots are blank. One of them has the Planeswalker symbol, and another has that weird Chaos symbol from earlier. During your turn, as a sorcery, so main phase when the stack is empty, you can roll the planar die. If it rolls on the Planeswalker symbol, you planeswalk to the next plane. You simply flip down the current plane and reveal your next one. If it rolls on that other symbol, it's the Chaos symbol, and chaos ensues. Each plane has an effect that happens when chaos ensues. It could be simple, or it could be more elaborate. Often, it ties into the first ability. For example, Jund gives you some goblins to devour, or Tawashi gives you counters to modify your creatures. Rolling to try and hit chaos can be a big boon, but you never know because you might end up going to some other plane that's less desirable. What if you want to roll more than once in a turn? Well, your first roll each turn is free. For each roll you want to make beyond that first one in a turn, it costs 1 additional mana. So 1 mana for your second roll, 2 mana for your third roll, and so on. If you really need to escape a plane, you can roll a bunch and make it happen. Over the course of the game, you're going to be hopping all across planes and seeing a wide variety of chaos effects. Every now and again, you might also run into a phenomenon like spatial merging. If planes are like enchantments, these are like sorceries. They show up, you do their effect, then you move on to the next plane. Oh, and as the game begins, you can't hit a phenomenon while revealing the first plane. That could just get silly. So with spatial merging, you actually end up with 2 planes out at once. There are all kinds of wild effects here, though there are usually very few phenomenons in a planar deck, so you don't have to worry about it too much. One thing I also want to say about Planechase is that it's just awesome to see these oversized art pieces. Seeing somewhere like Nyx shown off on a larger horizontal stage is just awesome. What a gorgeous piece of art. Anyway, that's the gist of Planechase. Cool global effects, some wild chaos abilities, and some die rolling to get there. So what can you expect out of the planes in March of the Machine Commander? Well, each deck has its own planar deck of 10 cards. 5 of these are new planes, 4 are plane reprints from before, and 1 of them is a phenomenon. And they can span the whole range of Magic's worlds and time periods, even some planes that technically aren't quite right anymore, like Panopticon, which exists from some plane called Mirrodin. Ever heard of it? It sure reminds me a lot of New Phyrexia though. I love traipsing through the worlds, and Ethan, being the lore master he is, got some real deep cuts in there. I can't wait for you to see them all. Each of the 5 commander decks actually has its own uniquely colored Planechase die. Here's the one for Growing Threat, this next one's for Cavalry Charge, then there's Call for Backup, here's the one for Divine Convocation, and if you get Tinker Time, this is what yours will look like. So cool. Which is your favorite? Okay, so what should you expect in games? Well, Planechase is a blast, and it can have some pretty wild swings. So you should be prepared to embrace the chaos a little bit, given the tide of the game can shift at any moment. When you add in time for rolling and wacky effects, Planechase Commander games can take a while too, so you should probably expect to settle in for a little longer than normal. Though some of the new planes really encourage attacking and moving the game along, so maybe less than you might think if you're used to Planechase Commander already. One thing to keep in mind is simply remembering to roll. It's easy to forget about, especially in the early turns, so keep your planar die at the ready. Put it on top of your deck if you have to. My general philosophy is that you should use your free roll each turn unless the plane you're on is awesome for you. Then, as you have extra mana, sink it into additional rolls. You might change the plane, which is probably net neutral, and sometimes you'll get a sweet chaos effect. Additionally, you should be thinking about if you want to do it before or after combat. A number of planes can modify combat in all sorts of ways, usually in beneficial ways for the attacker, but not always. In general, if combat looks great for you, I'd wait to roll until after combat. If you can't attack with much at all or anything, I'd do it pre-combat to see what happens. Pre-combat also gives you more information, so you know what to do with the rest of your turn. It's hard to know about for sure, but you can try and put your thumb on the Planechase scale just a little bit by thinking about when to roll in your turn. That said, you don't need to fret about before or after combat too hard. It's Commander Planechase after all. There's plenty of time to find new planes. What do you think about Planechase and the new card reveals? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk with you again soon. And until then, may you find just the plane you're looking for. You got this. Hint number 2. There is a card that calls back to a specific group of cards from New Phyrexia. Any guesses? Hint number 3. There is a card that begins whenever you cast a Phyrexian creature or artifact creature spell, and you'll just have to wait and see what the rest does. Hint number 4. There is a card with the